Welcome in to the EOT. We're coming to you live from the capital city of the great state of Texas. We're overlooking downtown Austin and the University of Texas, where they're fired up because the Longhorns are headed to the college football playoff. They are Big 12 champions off a 12-1 season. Welcome to the weekly broadcast that understands that the pride and tradition of the Texas football program will never be entrusted to the timid or the weak. It's the Eyes on Texas multicast. We are a multicast because you can hear us in multiple variety of places. You can see it on YouTube, on the Dave Campbell's Texas Football YouTube channel, the Horn and Austin YouTube channel, also on iTunes and Spotify. We are a product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network. We're powered by a presenting partner at Grande Equipment and our 4 other founding partners. I'm Aaron Hogan, morning show host at the Horn here in Austin. 25 years doing morning radio in the ATX. He is the senior writer at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, covering all things college and high school football in the great state. He is our friend Mike Craven. It's the multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football and all things football in Texas. Hello, Mike Craven. How are you, my friend?
Doing pretty good. Started a podcast on Texas. They're in the college football playoff. Not saying we're the reason, but
let's take it.
I'm not saying we're not the reason.
Well, thanks to you, our founding partners, and everyone that's listened all the way back. We started at spring practice with that this would be a good idea. You had the Dave Campbell's Texas Football, which is building and growing. It's been the high school Bible for so long, and now the growth of the college football brand that you're helping to spearhead. Let's do a podcast. You and I had talked about it for years in the past, and man, what a great run it's been so far. And now the month of December into January is going to be a heck of a lot of fun. And you know, everything we've talked about, starting with the spring, and could this team live up to expectation? Could it find the culture? Could it find the chemistry? The talent was really never in doubt if you go all the way back into March and April, Mike, that this team has plenty of talent. The portal was kind to Texas. The recruiting classes have been good. And, we'll get through it. We'll get into it on our 4 quarters of conversation today, culminating with a Big 12 championship in resounding exclamation point fashion, and then the news of Sunday morning of the college football playoff. It's been a heck of a run. And now you have a month to prepare for a Washington team in the college football playoff. And as Sark, you'll hear him say, if you can find a way to win that, you're playing for the national championship.
Yeah, the conversation around Texas was always if they could get back when it should have been, they needed to be different. Like Sark needed to come in and make this a different football team, a tough football team, a blue-collar football team, one that broke away from that Austin, big city, 6th Street stereotype that the Longhorns had even when Mac Brown was the head coach there, when they didn't win all of those games all of the time that they were supposed to win. The thing we talked about all offseason that could hold this team back was intangible stuff, was stuff that you just couldn't see until that football team was on the field. Could they finish games? Could they handle adversity? They did that each week, and even when they lost a game, they bounced back and won them, backed it up and did it without their quarterback for 2 weeks, and then going into the Big 12 championship and having such a dominating performance. It was an impressive season for the Longhorns.
And we'll talk about that game itself. Don't want that to get lost. Sark was clear that they're going to have a banquet that is going to be today on a Monday as we record this podcast to celebrate the season. What's to come is to come, but let's be present and let's celebrate this championship because it's been 14 years. And not enough over the last 26 years in the Big 12. So celebrate that. We'll talk about the game itself. We'll also talk about how Sunday morning with the college football playoff came down in the news. We'll hear from 2 of the main captains of the Longhorns, Quinn Ewers, the Texas quarterback who had a historically great Big 12 championship game on Saturday. Jalen Ford, the senior linebacker who has been here through 5-7 and now to 12-1. And a trip to the college football playoff. Before we get going with our 4 quarters, we can tell you we can also follow the show on Twitter at Eyes on Texas FB. Please do that. Give us a follow on Instagram at Eyes on Texas Pod. And now on Facebook, we're live at Eyes on Texas Podcast. Before we start, also, let's thank our presenting partner at Grande Equipment and our great friend and partner Wes Murray and his team. They understand that your reputation when you have a project is all you have. You need equipment, heavy equipment, and that's all that matters. Getting it done on time. No BS around that. That's why Grande partners with you on every project, and they have that way for more than 3 decades. They're not in the equipment business. Wes always tells me they're in the relationship business. When you need that right piece of equipment or lots of equipment for a project, they get you what you want. They'll get it to you quickly without hassles or any uncertainty of it being job site ready. The equipment from all the major manufacturers. They're an independent company, so Caterpillar, John Deere, Komatsu, Volvo, and more. Heavy equipment, sales, rentals, and repairs. It's Grande Equipment. They also have a new renewable energy sector that supports solar projects all over the country. Pile driver applications is their specialty, using new and used equipment with the capability of renting statewide and nationally. Grande Equipment is your local but international independent dealer. As Wes always tells me, they're small and nimble and independent, but play in the big leagues in a big way at grandeequipment.com. They were in AT&T Stadium on Saturday, pre-game and having a great old time. The whole team there at Grande Equipment. Huge Longhorn fans. Remember, Grande doesn't overpromise. They always over-deliver, like this Longhorn team has. Let's start with our first quarter. We will run through 4 quarters as we do each time. Halftime as well. A big announcement for a lifetime Longhorn who's going into the College Football Hall of Fame at halftime. Also, the Longhorns starring in the National Football League. We'll also hear from Texas players, and we'll get to the big questions of college football. That's obvious. Did the committee get it right? Texas is in, but Florida State is out. We'll discuss the justification for that and whether it was the right call. Also, the transfer portal is now open. The college football coaching carousel is spinning pretty quick right now, and 7 Texas teams going bowling, not just Texas, but Mike will help us with that as well. But let's kick off our first quarter, brought to you by the Texas Mortgage Guy, our buddy Carlos Carrion. For Longhorn fans looking for a new mortgage or down the road a refi, always look at thetexasmortgagiguy.com. He'll tell you all about him coming up after our first quarter. But, Mike, before we hear from Sark talking about the whirlwind last 24 hours from Saturday morning into Saturday afternoon into Sunday morning, what was your take on the Big 12 championship game? 49-21 Texas. Quinn Ewers, 452 yards and 4 touchdowns. It was almost a perfect, outside of the interception that Quinn threw, kind of the one time in the first half Texas got behind the chains where they had a holding penalty on Christian Jones that made it 1st and 20, and then Quinn threw a ball he didn't see the linebacker. Aside from that, Quinn threw for 450 and 4 touchdowns. Their receivers caught passes, 36 of them, for an average of 13 yards per catch. They had 7 different running backs run for 211 yards and 5 yards a clip. They were perfect in the red zone. And on defense, they held Ollie Gordon to 13 carries for 35 yards, the nation's top running back. Total domination.
First half against Oklahoma in 2021 is the only other script of Sark's I can remember that had me in awe.
Yeah.
They ended up losing that game when Caleb Williams came in, but they were dominating Oklahoma early, and a lot of it was scheme. There wasn't defenders within 4 or 5 yards of Texas receivers catching footballs, and it's not just because Xavier Worthy and JT Sanders are awesome. It's because they were getting schemed up, and the best view was from the press box, right? Like that bird's eye view of what they were doing. Everything had a purpose. Everything had emotion. Everything was disguised in a different way and playing off of each other. And then he just did it for 4 quarters. It's like everything he did had the Midas touch, and you saw what it did for Quinn Ewers, right? I mean, when a guy is open and he knows where to go with the football, that's top 10 NFL draft pick guy, and we saw that on Saturday. He was excellent. Other than that one mistake, he just simply didn't see a dude on a crossing route. You're going to have a couple of those throws. And then defensively, Devondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, I mean, if your recipe is what Oklahoma State's is, it's not getting baked. Like, it just can't happen. And so it was just dominate, just absolutely dominate.
Well, and I feel like that's why we'll hear Sark talking about the pivot points of the season and how they've gotten here. But the fact that they played 3 games in a row against Iowa State, Texas Tech, and Oklahoma State, which you always say styles make fights. That's a fight Texas wants to get into. Those are run-based power teams.
Which is what I meant earlier about they needed to become different. When was that true for Texas?
Oh, you're right about that.
That's why Gundy had the winning record against Texas. It's why Matt Campbell is the bugaboo. It's why people my age are scared of Kansas State. It's because they could take Texas into a bar fight, and that's not – Texas wanted it to be a beauty pageant. They no longer need that to be true. They can beat you in the bar fight, and then they can look prettier than you at the same time.
Well, that's huge kudos to Sark and Kyle Flood on the offensive line, Bo Davis on the defensive line, the recruiting, the strength and conditioning. I mean, they are the toughest team. And, yeah, they're the bullies on the block now, in addition to being, as you said, kind of breathtaking in their play calling. And this is what Sark has visioned, big humans and then speed and weapons and a quarterback that can sling it. Last week on the Eyes on Texas multicast, we talked about Sark and his praise for Mike Gundy's linebackers and just how good they were. Think about the first 3 plays to make it 7-0 after 3 and out on defense. Punt, short, 40 yards to cover. They go motion to the left, screen back to Cedric Baxter for 17 yards. They come back with a sweep to Keelan Robinson to the outside left side. They come back with play action left, roll back right, and Adonai Mitchell on a corner route to the pylon. Just those linebackers are doing this. They're on roller skates. I mean, they're not, because I believe firmly, and Mike Gundy kind of alluded to this after the game, they thought because they watched Texas run all over Texas Tech, and Iowa State, they were going to get a strong, heavy run. against Iowa State or against Oklahoma State. They did not. It was, they ended up running for 211 yards, but Sark believes in passing early to be able to run late. Yeah. Pass early and close out with the run with your big humans after you've worn them down. That was a clinic in play calling and taking their strength and playing against them. Because when they have those linebackers, Mike, and if you go back and look at the formations they were coming with in that game, Texas was on 2 backs a lot, so 21 personnel. When they go 21, you've got to match that, right? You got 21, 2 running backs and a linebacker and a tight end on the field. You're bringing extra linebackers. Well, then you pivot to pass off of that. Mm-hmm. They don't have the speed to cover you. They just don't.
Yeah, and if you can confuse them for a half step, they absolutely don't have the speed to make that up, you know? And so, like, that little split second where they're thinking about it is enough for J.T. Sanders to be on his own. I always, think of those kind of – it's like Greg Maddux pitching. Yeah. Where, everybody's taught that you use the fastball to set up the breaking ball stuff, and he flipped it on its head. And Sark does that as well as anybody, where it's like, I'm going to use the pass to set up the run, and by the time you're worn out and you're done and your brain's spinning 10 different ways because of everything we're doing, then we bash you in the face.
Yeah, now we come back and gut you with simple runs.
Right, just bludgeon you with with DJ Campbell. Kelvin Banks killed a guy, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
That was one of the better. After the game, they did a little scrum deal, and I just had the first question because I was standing right there next to Kelvin Banks, and I was like, tell me about that pull block. And do you know how good a block has to be for you to have to give no more context to the player who just played 80 plays and him just be like, yeah, so what I saw that, he knew exactly what I was talking about because that was beautiful. That was tremendous.
Oh, I mean, they were on point, and they went in with a purpose and mission accomplished, and they didn't know what was going to happen beyond it. But let's hear from Sark. Obviously, you wake up on Saturday morning, we'll hear from the players talk about, and Sark trying to sleep Saturday night into Sunday, how'd they sleep. But first, let's hear Sark talking about the last 24 hours, winning the Big 12 championship, taking that trophy from Brett Yormark. What a scene that was with the WWE belt and Brett Yormark getting flustered with all the boos and calling him Steve Garcesian, which I thought was pretty funny. It was a good scene.
That's the name he checks into hotels in.
Yeah, Steve Garcesian.
Yeah.
Pretty funny. Larry Sark, though, pretty happy with the last 24 hours of Texas football.
A lot of highs around here, and just to piggyback off of yesterday, what a great moment for our players and Longhorn Nation to celebrate a Big 12 championship. And regardless of how today was going to go, I wanted to make sure that we continue to celebrate that because I don't want to lose sight of it. It's been 14 years since we had won one, and only 4 in the last 27. So what a great accomplishment for this team. Happy for those kids, and now. Kind of the cherry on top is an opportunity to go compete for a national championship, to get into the playoff. And I think our guys have earned it. They've had a great season. I think we're playing our best football right now at the right time. And so we'll get back to work. There's a lot of work to be done. We've got a month till we play. We got finals to take. We got to get healthy. We got to have a regimented practice plan to get ourselves prepared to play. But it's a heck of an opponent. Washington's a great team, as we all well know. We played them last year in the Alamo Bowl. It's going to take a lot of preparation. It's going to take us playing our best football when that game rolls around to try to be successful.
How about that, Mike? The revenge tour continues. They've gotten to take receipts and finish off some rivals, and now you get to avenge last year's loss in the Alamo Bowl, 27-20. Fitting.
Yeah, who would have thought that, right? I mean, that's like a very weird thing, the way that played out. But I think they've been able to develop a chip on their shoulder that they haven't had previously, and playing against teams that beat them. And it's the last time those teams were going to play against Texas in a long time, so you didn't want to give them eternal scoreboard the way Texas has had on A&M or what Oklahoma State got on Oklahoma. They were able to use that not to build pressure on themselves and to play tight, but to build some motivation and to create some stuff that maybe wasn't always there, right? Like that you heard Kirby Smart last year at the national championship game be like, nobody believed in us in this room, talking to the media. And we were all looking at each other like, everybody believed in you, right? Like Texas, sometimes you got to manufacture that chip when you're the best team. Texas was able to do that, and I think it served them well in a season that gets really, really long, and you can lose some of that motivation.
There's a saying in leadership, and I think Sark, I know we've addressed it. We'll address it in coming episodes as we have a month now to get ready for the Washington game. But Sark had some really good stuff today again about, how he's been different as a coach and how he's connected with this team. But leadership experts will tell you the following: no care challenge. They have to know you care. You have to know your players. They have to know you care about them, and then you can challenge them.
Yep.
You can't go the other way, right? I mean, and that's what you like about Sark. He's been intentional about getting to know this team individually. I mean, compare him to Tom Herman previously, who I thought had the opposite approach, wanted to challenge without knowing no one knew if he cared or not. He knows this team. He knows those players. He cares, and then he can challenge them. So when it's time to raise your voice, it's time to really challenge. That's when you can point out the chip, right? That's when you can challenge a player and go deeper, and they believe you are doing it for their best interest and they care. That's the difference in my mind. Tom Herman wouldn't even say the kicker's name. Yeah. We thought it was a running gag that I don't know who the kicker is. Well, Sark talks openly about his relationship with Bert Auburn and thinks he's a great kid. He really knows him. That's a coach and a leader who knows his roster. And to your point about putting a chip, well, he knows where to push it, how to poke the bear. He knows them, and they know him. So let's it's like a jockey on a horse, man. Know when to go to the whip. You can't just whip it all the time. You got to know when to go to the whip. Sark has done a great job with that. Let's start with this. I think it started with the Alabama game. Sark has played this, outside of the first quarter and the last 2 minutes of the Oklahoma game. Sark, I think, has jockeyed this pony pretty dang strong. Starting with the Bama game, I thought this was a great piece of audio from Sark today when asked about the Bama game, because Bama's in 2, and there's been talk. A lot of Longhorn fans, I'm sure you've heard it, Mike, that if Texas doesn't get in, they need to not play tough non-conference games, immediately cancel the Michigan game, don't play Ohio State. It doesn't help you. It only hurts you. But Texas got in. And here's Sark, who, thank goodness, for the good of college football, good of the Longhorns, doesn't believe that at all. And here was Sark on how important that Week 2 game with Alabama was for obviously getting into the playoff, but also the team they became.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful of that, because I think for college football, that's needed. Right, when you look at the first 3 or 4 weeks of the college football season, if we don't play those types of games, and we're just waiting for conference play to begin, where's the excitement, right? What are we talking about? And so to get that spotlight that we had in Week 2, and that stage, I think was great for both of our programs, and not only from a recruitability standpoint, right? I mean, you see the kids see those games and they like, I want to play in those types of environments and in those types of games. But I think it was great for our team. That win gave us as much or more confidence than anything throughout the season to help us navigate our way through some of those other tougher games late in the year, because it gave us some more belief in what we were doing. And so there's a lot of value to playing those types of games early in the year. And obviously for the committee to recognize that, I think, is big, because now hopefully that'll continue to promote more games like that. And even for Alabama, for them not to get punished for playing that game, now it's okay to play these early games, and you can overcome that loss, especially when you're still a conference champion.
All right, the right answer, I think. Do not play these games. Texas will play Michigan. They could play Michigan for the national championship this year, or they're going to play in Week 2 in Ann Arbor next September. That's good for college football.
It's good for college football, and the 12-team playoff means that you can lose that football game and be fine. Alabama lost that football game and ended up being fine, and that's with a 4-team playoff. So if you're Texas, if you go 11-1 every regular season, you're in the 12-team playoff. That's going to happen as being part of the SEC. So you want to have those games, you want to test your teams, and I think as Alabama showed this year, not only can you overcome it, you can get better for it. The game's better for it, and it's why a lot of these dudes want to come to these universities. You can use it as a recruiting tool with the current recruits, and it gets them on the campus to play in those big games. You moved to the SEC because you didn't want to keep going to Ames, Iowa.
Yeah, you're right.
Now you get to go to Ann Arbor. You get to you go to Ann Arbor. You get to play Georgia, A&M for the first time, Florida, like that. That's why Colin Simmons is committed. You know what I mean? Like that's how you.
Oh yeah, you're not recruiting Arch Manning, Colin Simmons,
right?
Best players in the country if you're not going to the SEC.
And if you're not playing those kind of big games all the time, being on the national spotlight.
Well, and this is where Sark and this staff are doing an amazing job. They're developing players, whether they're 5-stars or walk-ons, right? They're recruiting at a high level, and that's what players want. My partner Rod Babers on the radio. Any player you talk to, what are you looking for coming out of high school? You want to play with great players, at a great university. You want to play for championships. You want to play in the NFL, period.
Yeah.
And if you can sell that, and Texas is now selling that, I mean, think about as we watch the end of the Pac-12, unfortunately, on Friday night with a great game, Oregon and Washington. What was the demise of the Pac-12? Those kids were growing up watching every championship game being decided in the Deep South at Clemson, at Georgia, at Bama, at LSU. That's why C.J. Stroud left. That's why Bryce Young left. That's why all the best players on the West Coast said, I got to go there if I want to play for championships. And the Pac-12 died. I mean, it died. So I still credit Jay Hartzell, Kevin Eltife, Texas, and Chris Del Conte for the vision to say, you know what, that's where we need to be. And then hiring a coach and a staff who would build the roster to be ready for that. That's huge credit to the entire leadership and their vision.
Everybody's always told me you are the 5 people that you hang out with.
Yep.
And Texas had to decide the group of people they wanted to hang out with, right? And did you want to be with those Big 12 teams, with those Pac-12 teams, and that potential merger that they had talked about? Or did you want to be grouped with the teams that take football as seriously as you do? For the Longhorns, that was a pretty easy decision.
Well, and football and athletics, too. I mean,
Yeah,
every sport in the SEC is important.
Right. Yeah.
So the Texas swimming team will get challenged more in the SEC and the track and field department and the baseball team and the basketball team. It's going to be a lot of fun. But the football team is, you're right, that's the meal ticket. Let's hear from Sark on getting Texas back here. Actually, no. We'll get to that in a second, but I wanted to play this one because we're kind of going through in our first quarter here on the Eyes on Texas multicast CFP edition. The roadmap of this season. The Alabama game was pivotal, as Sark just said, but Sark was asked today about what was there a biggest single moment that defined the clarity? And that's hard to do, right? There was a goal line stop against Houston. There was the TCU play where A.D. Mitchell caught a third down play, which was critical. There were big moments, but Sark cited one as being what he would say is the defining moment of this season to this point, 12-1 and Big 12 champions.
I don't know if there's a singular play. I would say the goal line stand against Kansas State, because that took some real resolve. You know, that took 4 plays in a row of different players making plays. It wasn't about one player. It wasn't about, one just phenomenal play. It was about execution. It was about a variety of players doing their jobs really well. It was about supporting one another and picking each other up when Quinn is out that game. Malik's starting. We had been turning the ball over offensively, and our defense found a way to win that game at the end in 4 straight plays. Probably that sequence of plays is something that stands out to me because I think that's what this team is made up of, and so I probably lean into that sequence as much or more than anything.
I think he's right. If you combine the Alabama win and the confidence it brought, and remember the circumstances of the K-State game. Quinn Ewers was hurt. K-State was coming in hot. You got off to the great starts. Looked like you're going to blow them out, and then some mistakes by your backup quarterback and your punt team, and all of a sudden they're back in the game, and you're trying to hold on. Your captains, your defense rose up and made huge play. Not just one, but 4. That's a great point by Sark, that if you don't win that game, you're not here. That derails everything. You survived it, then you got healthy, and now you're playing your best football and going to play for a championship.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You know, to go 2-0 with your backup quarterback has to give everybody that belief of we get Quinn back and we can beat anybody.
Yeah.
You know, we are, and then you see what Alabama's doing. You know, they watch SportsCenter, they watch TV, they know who the best teams are. And you see Alabama rolling, and you're like, man, we went there and beat them by 10. They may join us in this college football. We can win the national championship if we can just get there and take care of business. And you saw the last 3 weeks specifically them stop kind of playing around with their food, play more 4-quarter football games, and just dominate some people and make it to where there wasn't the chance for this committee to look at them and go, well, they haven't been playing that good of football. Do we have them at 4? As Alabama passed them up? I mean, they were 3rd. There wasn't even a conversation of who was getting into the playoffs. And so I think that's how they played as much as who they played.
Yep, and the roller coaster of the emotions of the highs of September, the injuries, and the loss and near loss of October to now. And you're right, second half of Iowa State through Texas Tech and Oklahoma State on Saturday, they've outscored their opponents 126-41. Yeah. 126-41. That's putting your foot on the gas, and that's why they have a chance to play for the championship on January 1st. One other from Sark in our first quarter, and we'll wrap it up. Actually, 2 others. Big picture for Texas. Getting Texas back here. This is a good one, too, for Texas fans and our Eyes on Texas multicast viewers, because getting Texas back to this point, this is pretty good and revealing from Sark. and candid about why he took this job.
There became a point when I was at Alabama when, all right, I'm going to be a head coach again, and I want to go somewhere where I have a legitimate chance to win championships. And when this opportunity came, to me, this was the no-brainer because I know what this place can do, and I understand there's high expectations and a high standard here for winning championships, but that's why I came here. I wasn't naive to think that, I just get to be a head coach and ho-hum and win 8 games and everything's going to be great. No, you're brought here to compete for championships year in and year out. And so now to be here in year 3, this is why I came. And so, and I never wavered off that with our players. I stayed consistent with that through 5 and 7 and through 8 and 5 and even into this season. And I like I said, I'm grateful for our players that they believed in me of the path and the process that it was going to take to get to this point.
All right, good stuff from Sark. Any thoughts or just more of the same? That's what you want to hear from your leader of your program now and as you head into the SEC.
Yeah, I mean, he's a confident guy, obviously, who's gone through some stuff, has come on the other side, and that can provide you some toughness and some clarity. And he feels he's a guy it takes that type of personality type to come into Texas and handle it. And I think we've seen other personality types that maybe, really, like Charlie Strong was the greatest guy in the world, right? He just wasn't that organized. Like Tom Herman was a little bit more organized, but, he didn't treat players, to your point earlier about the punter thing, as well. Sark comes in here with that NFL mindset, who's seen it done at Alabama, who had the confidence in himself that if he could stay on the straight and narrow, that everything around him would take place. It wasn't great the first 2 years, but they've come out the other side of this, one of the better programs in college football, and built in a way that feels sustainable. Like, this doesn't feel like one of those, like, when a certain couple players leave, this thing's off the tracks. He's kind of building it in a way that feels sustainable over time, like Alabama, like Georgia, like Ohio State, like Clemson.
All right, coming up, we'll hear from Quinn Ewers, Jalen Ford, and more from Sark on the big decision and how it went down. But before we wrap up our first quarter, brought to you by the Texas Mortgage Guy, Carlos Carrion. Can we hear one other to wrap up the first quarter with Sark, talk about what the plan for the next month is, now that we know Texas is in, and how they got here, the path to 12-1 and a Big 12 Conference Championship. What is the plan for the next month until January 1st when the Longhorns play the Washington Huskies the night of the first day of 2024?
I think naturally that's one of the beauties of being in the playoff. You like to think you're not going to have opt-outs, right? That you're playing for a championship. And last year was difficult, and so the fact that they'll have everybody there and hopefully healthy, and that we have time to get ourselves healthy, which has been a little bit of an issue of ours here over the last month or so, of just kind of little nagging injuries. To get our team healthy and an opportunity to put our best foot forward is huge, because it's going to be needed. Washington's a very good team, and they're going to be healthy too. They've had their own injury bug that they've been dealing with, so it's going to be a great challenge. Should be a heck of a game.
Real quick, Mike, roadmap is good because the portal's now open. We've seen 11 Ohio State players have entered the portal up in Columbus. Not sure what's happening there, including their starting quarterback as they head to the Cotton Bowl coming up, play Missouri. No Texas players into the portal today, which is a good thing on this Monday. We'll follow that, so you got to re-recruit your own roster. You want to attack the portal for your own needs for next year. And you have a signing class December the 20th, which is 2 weeks from Wednesday. That's when the early signing window opens to get a bulk of 80-90% of your recruiting class for 2024.
Yeah, and the later your bowl game, the more opportunity you have as a coaching staff to spend this last 2 weeks, 3 weeks really honing down on your recruiting class and locking those guys in, cherry picking a few extra guys, making sure nobody decommits, seeing if you can flip a dude. Whereas, my UTSA Roadrunners bowl game is December 19th. It's hard to get on the road and, like when you have practices all of the time, right? Yeah. And so there's little hidden advantages there. Mostly, though, it gives players 2 weeks to kind of do some lifts, get some rehab in, get those, bumps and bruises
get away from
out
football
of the way.
A little bit.
Yeah, decompress, do your finals. I know we forget this, but there's still tests to be had at some point as a college student. So try to get a lot of that stuff out of the way, be rocking and rolling and ready once they lock in for playoff practice.
And, right after Christmas, which is the 25th, you got a full week of get back to game week prep. They'll do some ahead of it. It's there's Sark with the rundown. All right, that's our first quarter. Pretty deep stuff. Good conversations. Big 12 championship We'll get into the how the day went on Sunday with the announcement, and we'll hear from Quinn Ewers and Jalen Ford. We'll hear from Sark more. First quarter closed on time by our man Carlos Carrion, the Texas Mortgage Guy, online at TexasMortgageGuy.com. When it's time for a new mortgage or refi down the road, always better working with an expert in the field, but also one who's a diehard Longhorn fan like you, lifelong Austinite, talk Longhorn sports of any kind, football, of course. Just makes sense. It works better. It's a more comfortable environment. And he's just working with like-minded people, know the business, know Austin, and know what's best for you, or at least we'll try to figure out what's best for you. That's what Carlos Carrion is all about. As we say, born and raised here in Austin, decade in the mortgage business. Great communicator, fast response times. He doesn't want to be your just a quote for you. Anybody can give you that. He wants to be your guide, roadmap to help solve problems, strategize the important financial decisions of your life, like a new home or a refi. Find him TexasMortgageGuy.com. Also on social media. Just search Facebook as well, Carlos Carrion, Careon. Also on Twitter at Carlos Carrion 36. Second quarter delivered by the Good Times and Incredible Scratch Comfort Food at Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood, Texas, between Kyle and Wimberley. Good luck to the Wimberley Texans, by the way. Still playing in the state semifinals. They're going to play Belleville this week, Friday, up in Pflugerville. Good luck to the Wimberley Texans. Also Lake Travis and Liberty Hill in the Central Texas area. One win away from playing in Jerry World next weekend. And you get all that information at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, Mike.
That's right, TexasFootball.com. Got it all. Locations, times, all that kind of stuff.
And good coverage.
Yeah.
Not just college football, but the high school Bible as well. And what is that, $50 the whole year?
$50 the whole year. Digital, you get the streaming, the magazines, and all the digital content.
Best deal in media right there.
I believe so.
If you're a fan of football, high school, and college in the great state. All right, so second quarter delivered by Hayes City Store. Let's hear Sark. This is pretty good about when the announcement came down. Sunday morning, about 11:20 in the morning. You had to wait through about 20 minutes of jabbering. They announced that was kind of tenuous. But you knew Michigan was going to be 1. You knew Washington would be 2. And here we go with Texas and the announcement at number 3.
What a cool scene. As I was standing there, I kind of took a moment to look at Jalen Ford, Tavondre Sweat, Jordan Whittington, J.T. Sanders, those guys that signed up for something totally different than when we came. And there was, the journey has been difficult at times, and it hasn't been all celebrations and cheers, and there's been some tough moments. So to see those guys be able to have that emotion yesterday on the field after the game, and that emotion right there that they're competing for a national championship. That's why they came to the University of Texas, right? That in your mind when you go to college and all right, I'm gonna go to Texas. I'm gonna be competing for a national championship. Well, now that's a reality. Now we get a one game season here, and if we're good enough, then we get another game season. And so now it's just putting forth the right effort and energy to try to make that happen.
Good stuff. And from where it was, let's hear from Jalen Ford, Mike, because Jalen Ford was here for 5 and 7. He was here for Tom Herman. He came here as a linebacker out of the Metroplex, and things weren't great. And then there was a coaching change. And in this day and age of portal and COVID, could have gone anywhere, could have made the change he wanted to make. But Jalen Ford was there, and he talked about his night, how it went, the bus ride home, watching the Bama game, and then to the great moment on Sunday morning.
We watched the Bama game on the bus, and then we seen Bama win. And we was like, okay, we got a chance, And then we seen I watched the Florida State game at home, and then that kind of gave me a little doubt, just because you never know. So I think, and then you kind of got those first 2 spots watching the little the show or whatever, and then you like that third spot, and so everybody's like, oh, my heart's starting to beat, or like a little nervous, So, but it's fun, and it's kind of cool just because that's just how much everybody cares about it. And when we seen that third spot go to us, everybody just erupted, and it was pretty cool, great moment.
All right, the elation, right? All the work, all the, and I will say for Jalen Ford, we'll hear him coming up talking about playing Washington again and another rematch and how cool that is. But he was asked about the Florida State players, and he had a real great response to that too, about how he feels terrible for them, like they don't work any harder than we do, and or they work as hard as we do, and we'll get into it in our fourth quarter. That's tough. Someone was going to get left out. You feel bad, and Jalen was genuinely, felt terrible for the Florida State players because he knows how excited he is, and he can imagine how heartbroken those guys are.
Yeah, no doubt. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But I can't. It just never felt like Texas could be out. But I imagine if you're a player or you're a coach, you're inclination is to think about the worst case scenario and that maybe they will screw us.
Yeah, I think you and I were in the same line, but saying, yeah, you're right, because you're out of control, right? You try to, your coaches preach and players think, control the controllables, well, then you're out of control. All you can do is watch the games and hope like hell, like everybody else, that you can find your way in. Let's hear from Quinn Ewers. We'll hear more from Quinn here throughout our multicast here tonight, but Quinn was the MVP of the game, 454 yards and 4 touchdowns, one of the great Big 12 championship game performances on his way out, historically good. But here's Quinn on from the Bama win. This was a good one. This is him talking about the win at Bama and just how important that was to this team's development, to what you saw on Saturday and where they are now.
100%. I think that's why that Coach Sark and some of those guys wanted to have a scheduled game, pre-conference game of that aspect, because going into Alabama and winning like we did early in the year is a hard thing to do, and for us to accomplish that is awesome at its own, and for it to have worked out in our favor this year it's been phenomenal.
All right, so that win justifies Texas more than anything else, right? Without it, who knows, right? I mean, they wouldn't. You don't play that game. You say if you play South Alabama or somebody, and you're not in this spot with the same resume minus that game.
Yeah, let's say that third game was UTSA and not Alabama. Texas isn't in the college football playoff.
Nope.
I think it's more likely Ohio State or Georgia's in the college football playoff, and obviously Florida State up there as well. That was the thing. We'll talk about this later, but that was the thing that was weird. Is like if Alabama's above Florida State, how is Georgia not above Florida State? But anyway,
Conference championship.
Yeah, but I
think that'd be the data point.
But if it's like we're going with best team, then like clearly Florida State's not even fit. Anyway. It just feels like they pick and choose sometimes.
Yeah, you're
like
right.
What they really go by, and so if you're Texas though, this was the matchup you wanted, right? Did you you don't want Michigan, you don't want Alabama, right? You want Washington. You get it at the Sugar Bowl. I think it's about as good as it could have came out for Texas.
Yeah. Now the reality is, I mean, Washington does best what Texas struggles with most. I mean, Michigan's a running team, Bama's a running team predominantly, but. I mean, and Michael Penix is really good. I think it's a hell of a game. Just think about the Final Four and the coaching matchups. I mean, you got Sark v. Kalen DeBoer, two younger, rising stars in coaching, and then you got Saban and Harbaugh. Come on now, a couple of legends going head-to-head with two rock'em sock'em football teams. Pretty darn good. And if Texas were to win this game, find a way, you're going to play one beat-up team that following week, because that Michigan-Alabama game is going to be a physical beast.
Yes.
There'll be some paint traded in that game, heavy hitting for Alabama and Michigan to try to get to the national title game. One more from Jaylen Ford to wrap up our second quarter of the Eyes on Texas. Jaylen Ford on Facing Washington. This is pretty funny. Somebody asked him, and you can see the wry grin on this team. The FAFO, F around and find out, has become the mantra. And revenge games have become the mantra. And what do you know? The Longhorns in a semifinal situation get to play a team they played last December 28th and lost. A chance to avenge that. Here's Jaylen Ford.
Yeah, another rematch. I mean, our biggest thing is just kind of getting all this year. Our thing was like the teams that we lost to last year, giving them our best shot again, and to see that us and Washington are in the college playoffs after being in the Allen Bowl last year is kind of it's kind of ironic, but they got a good team, and I think for us, we're just ready to finally get a chance to go show what Texas football is.
All right, there you go, another revenge game, and there's some players. We'll get more from Jaylen and Quinn Ewers on this team and how they've come together this year. But your second quarter was delivered by the incredible Scratch Food and Amazing Times at Hayes City Store and Ice House in Driftwood, Texas. Hayes City ready to serve your family and big group. If you got a big birthday party or big Christmas family in town, you want to get out there. They're the total package, absolute destination location. From however far, it's worth your trip. Seating inside the original store, the bar and kitchen, of course, on the picnic tables, under the gorgeous canopy of oak trees. They've laid down the turf there. It's just a perfect spot on a nice day or nice afternoon or evening. Live music stage there as well. Great live music 6 nights a week. And the adjacent the Ice House and Sports Bar, where you can sit there even when weather's rough. You can be under there, and they close down the tarps there and the shields, and still wonderful inside for the food and the sports. Great spot. Hayes City Store, famous for their scratch comfort Texas comfort food, including the wood-fired pizzas, the house-ground burgers, the chicken fried steak, truck stop enchiladas, the full bar, great margaritas, over 53 beers on tap, and so much more. The complete mouth-watering menu is online at HayesCityStore.tx.com. And don't forget about Travis and Tamara's new location. It's a steak and seafood, little higher-end spot, but still the formal casual mix in Buda, Texas, right in downtown. Charming Buda downtown on Main Street. It's called Taste on Main. Either one, phenomenal for your holiday season or anytime at Hayes City Store and Taste on Main. All right, halftime, of course, we check on the NFL Longhorns and get you some former Longhorn news, including congratulations to the lifetime Longhorn Derek Johnson, one of the greatest defensive players in Texas football history. Remember, an elite group of Longhorns who's earned consensus first-team All-American honors multiple times. He's going to be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame this Tuesday. So we record on a Monday. That'll be tomorrow night. The College Football Hall of Fame, part of the 2023 class, the Nagurski and Butkus Award winner, and one of the best players on the defensive side in Longhorn football history, will be the 25th Longhorn inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. 22 Longhorns have gone in before him, or 25th Longhorn, but the College Football Hall of Fame all the way back to, 1944. When the first class went in. You're thinking of guys like Earl Campbell and Chris Gilbert, Jerry Gray, on down, Jerry Sizemore, Vince Young, of course, and on. Mac Brown, class of 2018. Darrell Royal is in there as well. And now Derek Johnson, rightfully going in out of Waco, Texas, to the College Football Hall of Fame. Nolan Hogan, our digital producer, always keeping his eye on the National Football League, Longhorns, and what they're doing on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays. How was the week for the Horns there, No?
Not too bad. Seattle and Dallas started off on Thursday night. Quandre Diggs.
He played great in that game.
He played great. Six tackles, 4 solo. Then moving on to Sunday, the first national game of the day, 12 o'clock game between Houston and Denver. P.J. Locke was in for the suspended Kareem Jackson for all his dirty hits this season. And
he played good, too, against Houston.
He played great. He had 8 tackles, 6 solo, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. Another Longhorn that played in that game on the Denver side of the ball was L.J. Humphrey. Lil Jordan Humphrey had one reception for 12 yards. Andrew Beck also had a reception with the absence of Dalton Schultz this week with a hamstring injury. Malcolm Roach played for New Orleans this week against Detroit. Had 3 tackles, 1 solo at the nose tackle position. Another great day. Bijan Robinson, playing with Atlanta, played against the New York Jets this week, who have been dominant against the run game. So he had 18 carries. They fed him this week, 53 yards, and 3 receptions for 26 yards. Deshaun Jameson, special teams guy for the Carolina Panthers, 1 solo tackle. Deshaun Elliott, playing with the Miami Dolphins, had 3 tackles, 1 solo. And Cameron Dicker finished off the day with 2 field goals made. Scored the only points for the L.A. Chargers.
All right, good stuff. Yeah, they won 6-0. Bill Belichick, the GOAT, maybe the best coach ever. His defense has held 3 consecutive teams to under 10 points, and they've lost all 3 games. That's incredible. Their offense is historically bad. Might miss Tom Brady just a little bit. There's our halftime, brought to you by our friend Richard Striever and his great team at One Source Gas. You know, when you're a compressed gas shop or any small business and you're taking market share and you're growing, it tells you you're doing it right, and that's what they are at One Source Gas. They provide compressed gases such as CO2, nitrogen, oxygen, propane, and many more to various industries in the great state, all over Central Texas. Started as a little old company, and they keep growing up into Round Rock, down into San Marcos, and down into Braunfels, because it's their hospitality and their service and taking care of people and making sure you have what you need when you need it. They serve the service and hospitality industry while also serving medical, veterinary, industrial needs that you have for compressed gas. You need it. You got to have it. You can't do your job without it, whether it's bar taps or dental office or veterinary clinic. If you have a business that has compressed gas needs and you're looking for a new CO2 or compressed gas provider who's better than one you have now, I promise you it's going to be One Source Gas of Central Texas. Online at onesourcegasatx.com. That's the number 1, O-N-E. Spell it out. Right? O-N-E, OneSourceGasATX.com, or call Richard and his team, 512-214-8484. One of their great staff members will be glad to help you with your compressed gas needs now and into the future. One Source Gas ATX. All right, third quarter time, presented by Brain Vault. And the Brain Vault technology, much more than a mouthpiece. It's an orthotic that is a proven way for young athletes to play hard but play safe, minimizing the risk of concussions. Proven on the football field and on the fields of play, but also proven research-based and technology and science as well. We'll tell you about it coming up. But third quarter is the big story in college football, and this Eyes on Texas podcast. Did they make the right call on the 4-team playoff? Longhorn fans Didn't really have to worry once you saw Texas at 3. The next question was, what about 4? They made the call for Alabama as a conference champion, but a one-loss conference champion to Texas back in September. That left Florida State out, Mike. An undefeated 13-0 conference champion, won all their games by double digits, beat 2 SEC teams along the way, really found a way, everything coaches preach, overcome adversity, even with a third-string quarterback in your championship game, won the game, and they feel like they were penalized for the quarterback. Let's hear Boo Corrigan real quick. Boo Corrigan, I have to point this out, he is not only the committee chair of the College Football Playoff Committee, 13 members, he's also the athletic director at North Carolina. He is an ACC athletic director, and Florida State is an ACC team. So this obviously was not his decision. Cost that conference a lot of money to not have a semifinal team. But here is Boo Corrigan on the reason that they chose Bama over Florida State.
Florida State is a different team than they were through the first 11 weeks. Coach Norvell, their players, their fans, an incredible season. But as you look at who they are as a team right now, without Jordan Travis, without the offensive dynamic that he brings to it, they are a different team. And the committee voted Alabama 4 and Florida State 5.
All right, Mike, your thoughts on the decision?
We could do an hour on this.
I know.
Well, you probably did 5 hours on this earlier today.
We did.
I think that the committee came out with the best 4 teams. I don't know if for the 10 previous years or the 9 previous years of the college football playoff, if that was actually the criteria they used. I know they say that's what they do, but it's always been the 4 most deserving teams. I don't think Cincinnati was one of the 4 best teams when they made it in there. I'm not sure TCU was one of the 4 best teams when they made it in there last year, and a 2-loss Alabama team. Was probably that. This Alabama team wasn't one that just dominated through the season, and it was like, how can you write the story of college football in 2023 without Alabama? I was at the A&M game where they won by 6 points in large part because Nick Saban didn't go for it on 4th down multiple times. We're 8-9 days away or removed from them needing a 4th and 31 Hail Mary miracle play to beat a bad Auburn team that lost to New Mexico State the week before. So I just don't I think that the committee looked around and said, if we don't have an SEC champion in the playoff, is it a legitimate playoff? And I don't think that they believed it did, because everybody's had the brain rot of believing that if the SEC is the best at everything all of the time. And then I also think that they were worried about a TCU-Georgia situation. Nobody wants a 65-7 semifinal. They're just removed off of what happened with TCU, and they did not want Florida State to get absolutely, mollywopped by Michigan in the Rose Bowl. And I think those two things combined to come up to where we are.
Let's also say this, because, this is a committee that, you're chosen to be on, but I don't think any of us would want to be on that committee yesterday.
I would have.
You would? Well, yeah, that was a really hard call. The word unicorn comes from unique, right? It was a unique situation that we've never seen before. We've never gone into a weekend, the final weekend of the year, with 8 teams having a chance for the 4 spots. We've never had that. All the way back at Alabama at 8, Texas at 7, depending on how things fell, everybody had a look at it. We knew that, and that's never happened before.
It felt clean to me. You have 3 undefeated Power 5 champions, and then the 2 other teams that are right there on the doorstep. One of them beat the other by 10 at their home field.
I understand the argument, but I'm also saying that someone was getting left out, because the first time this year there were 5 worthy conference champions. There's never been that. No. Last year there were 2 teams who didn't win their conference in the Final Four. TCU and Ohio State didn't even win the conference.
For sure.
So it was pretty clear to me going into the weekend that winning your conference championship was going to be a data point that was massive. Georgia doesn't have it. Ohio State doesn't have it. They out. Florida State does, but you had to take the extenuating circumstances into it. But I thought that the athletic director at NC State or at Florida State, Michael Adams, had a really strong statement, and he blasted the committee. And I think rightfully so. He had to defend his program and his team. So the consequences of giving into the narrative of the moment are destructive, far-reaching, and permanent, not just for Florida State, but for college football as a whole. The argument of whether a team is most deserving or best is a false equivalence. It renders the season up to yesterday irrelevant and significantly damages the legitimacy of college football's playoff. The 2023 Florida State Seminoles are the epitome of a total team. To eliminate them from a chance to compete for a national championship is unwarranted an injustice that shows complete disregard and disrespect for their performance and accomplishments. It's unforgivable. Well, I mean, that's a strong stance. The point is, look, we found a way to win. We found a way to beat Florida, an SEC team. We found a way to beat LSU at the beginning of the year, an SEC team. Now you're telling us we're not as good as the SEC. Now, for those, because I can argue both sides of this, Florida State, their combined opponents did not have a winning record this year. Alabama's combined opponents that they played were 50 games over 500 this year, or 40 games over 500. So the strength of schedule wasn't close. But, you can understand Florida State being livid about it, but someone was going to be livid at the end of the day. And I think doing the right thing by the matchup, getting Saban, Harbaugh, Jalen Milroe beat J.J. McCaffrey, that's a better matchup. And it really is for the fans, for the TV show that it is. Should it be that way? Probably not, but in the same point, it is a big business.
Yeah, again, I think the committee chose the 4 best teams. I'm just not sure that is truly what the 4-team playoff is. I know that they've written that into the bylaw to give themselves this kind of out, and it usually doesn't come up. Usually there's not 4 teams that are worthy of this.
That's the other part. This year there are 5 members.
This year there just had to be. It's just what we think is going to happen and what we think is true cannot be more important than what has happened. Or we're doing figure skating. We're not doing football.
Right.
Everybody thought Oregon would beat the tar out of Washington. That was a 9.5-point spread. I made a lot of money off of that.
Yeah.
They weren't right. And I'm not saying Florida State would have gone and beat Michigan, just like I thought Cincinnati had no chance to beat Alabama. Just like I didn't think TCU could beat Georgia. I bet more money than I've ever bet on a sporting event in my life on TCU Georgia because it was such a lopsided competition. But they earned the right to get there by having a resume to get there. And what happens once you're there doesn't determine if you were worthy of getting there or not.
Agreed.
Florida State's not UCF. Like, this is not the Mountain West. Like, they won a conference against a top 20 team with a third-string quarterback. If Georgia had done that, the narrative would have been, look how great their defense is. They win hard-nosed games. They're going to grind this thing out and win 14-7. You didn't give Florida State that chance because we don't believe the ACC is what the SEC is.
And SEC bias did play out. You weren't leaving the SEC champ out. You're just not.
They weren't going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, ESPN's about to spend billions to own the SEC. That you can't hide your head and think that's not part of this.
No doubt.
It certainly is. Because, I mean, look, you can say this, what you just said, Florida State, give them a chance. I mean, you used to win games with defense and special teams, and their defense is really good. Or you can say, you know what, without their quarterback, they're Iowa. So who wants to see Iowa play Michigan again? I just watched it.
I get it.
So a lot of conversations. There just happen to be too many worthy teams this year for the 4 spots, and really the heartbreaking part for Florida State, Mike Norvell and those players, is next year this wouldn't happen. Next year they'd be in. They'd be a 5 seed hosting Liberty in a first-round playoff game in middle December. But that's not this year, and you feel really bad for them. That's our third quarter. It's brought to you by Brain Vault and the Brain Vault technology. Time to play safe, but play hard with Brain Vault at the same time. If you have a youngster in a collision sport, contact sport, get them fitted for the Brain Vault technology, a revolutionary and patented mouth guard that has been proven to help reduce the risk of concussions. And it's proven on the football field for 8 years with more than 100 NFL players wearing the Brain Vault technology with Drew Pittman, the NFL agent, and my dentist, Dr. Greg Eckert. They have now taken this to retail for young athletes because it is such an advance to help reduce the risk of brain injuries, traumatic brain injuries, and concussions. And all you have to do is go to brainvault.com. If your youngster plays, football or rugby, lacrosse, cheerleading, soccer, go to the website, brainvault.com. Right at the top of the page, you'll see what is Brain Vault. You click on that and have all your questions answered of what it is, how it was developed, and why it works. And then you schedule a fitting, individual or group, your whole team, their entire high school teams, lacrosse teams, cheerleading teams here in Central Texas, and now all over Texas who are getting fitted and getting set because it's got to be fitted for your jawline. It's only your orthotic. It fits to your mouth perfectly because that's why it works. Aligning the lower jaw in a position to the head and neck allows for maximum force and like a shock absorber for the mouth during that contact. It is such an advancement. It does work, research-based and on the field. Time to play hard, but play safe with Brain Vault at brainvault.com. All right, it is fourth quarter time. Let me just mention, though, to wrap up our did they get it right, it is telling that, and again, you just said the odds makers were dead wrong on Oregon. The prize for Florida State is to play Georgia in the Orange Bowl, and they're 14-point underdogs as we sit here today, 14-point underdogs. They can prove their point right there. If they go in and win that game, wouldn't that be something? Because Georgia's shown up and not cared before, if memory serves. and Georgia got left out of this after 29 consecutive wins and then a loss to Alabama.
Can I make one last?
Please do.
If Florida State wins that football game, they can make a claim to a disputed split national champion.
You're right about that.
Alabama could not had they have gone and won their bowl game. Nobody would have been like, well, that season was tainted. You didn't put Alabama in. They didn't win the national championship at all. But with Florida State, you didn't give them the chance to get blown out by 40 to prove that they weren't the best football. All they did was everything that they could do, and that still wasn't enough. That is a symptom of a broken system.
And that's why they're going to 12, just a year too late, or a year not a year enough here as far as that goes for this. But you're right. If they win that game, they can make a claim, and that's I'd love to see that. I think that'd be great for the sport if they somehow won it, and for those young players, and see if they can find the momentum for that. But Jordan Travis isn't coming back. They're going to have a backup quarterback.
Should they have lied about that?
What?
How severe that injury was? Shouldn't, in retrospect, shouldn't they have just said it was like
Jordan Travis?
Yeah. Just been
but if you saw it, his leg went the wrong way.
I know. I just
there was no way to hide that.
we're opening up ourselves to a point where that's going to become a reality for this kind of thing. If
you're going to say like Quinn Ewers' shoulder, you're going to say he's week to week,
right? Because let's say Quinn Ewers goes down in the third quarter. He did go down for like a split second in the third quarter of that football game, where he missed like a play or whatever when it looked like he had been landed on funny. If that was a 6-week injury, if you're Texas, there's no way you say that.
No.
Because you now know that is a factor. And it's just like little things like that they're adding into the equation that is going to be – there's going to be a ripple effect here of how injuries are talked about, because you're going to want to hide big ones if you're on that 10 to 15 bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
exactly.
And, think about it. You couldn't have hid that injury. I mean, it was think Dak Prescott. I mean, his leg.
Do the Aaron
broke.
Rodgers. He just, science and him just agree, or medicine and him.
Well, and poor Jordan Travis had a tweet saying, "I wish I'd gotten hurt sooner, so my team could have shown how good they are without me. It's not all about me." It was pretty heartfelt. Yeah. I feel terrible for that team. All right. Also around the state of Texas, the Eyes on Texas multicast, because we're looking all over the great state. 7 other teams and Texas going bowling. Longhorns are going to the Sugar Bowl. How about G.J. Kinney's Bobcats of Texas State? First time a bowl trip ever. Going to say congratulations to the new president there. Also, Don Coryell.
Yeah.
Good friend of mine, the athletic director. He's wanted this for so long and hired G.J. Kinney. They go 7-5. And, that crazy game at Arkansas State where they give up 77 points and 3 defensive touchdowns. But other than that, just a great season for them. They're going to play Rice, another Texas team you cover, Mike, in the First Responders Bowl up in Dallas on December 26th. Good for both schools.
Yeah, good game for both schools. I think we see this more and more as the state gets split up. We got a couple in the American, one in the ACC, 2 in the Conference USA, 1 in the Sun Belt. So there's going to be more of these interstate games that we used to get in conferences. Excited for Texas State, excited for Rice. Everybody talks about how the bowl games don't matter anymore, and they don't to like the Blue Bloods. Ohio State doesn't care about their bowl game. I doubt Georgia's going to care about theirs, for example. But for Texas State, this is absolutely going to matter. For Rice, this is absolutely
Well, fans can travel and be a part of it right after Christmas, Tuesday after Christmas.
For the players, they get some cool stuff. Like being in Texas, with your NIL, you're probably not getting anything from the Sugar Bowl you couldn't get yourself. But for these guys, they're going to have a trip, and it's going to be a lot of fun for them.
Yeah, 7-5 for the Bobcats and beat Baylor. Mike Bloomgren has a nice season. They're going to play on December 26th. A&M will face Oklahoma State in the Texas Bowl. I'm not sure who's going to coach that team. Elijah Robinson was the interim coach, but he's taking the Syracuse job. I guess he'll do double duty for a little while as Mike Elko gets this thing cranked up. Have you heard anything on Mike Elko's first offensive coordinator at A&M? What's the latest?
I have not. That's been one that I've been wanting to dig into, but the Houston stuff was happening over the weekend with Willie Fritz. UTEP broke today with Scotty Walden. I was at the Big 12 Championship, and so I just haven't been able to dig as much into the offensive coordinator. One name to keep an eye on, Brendan Marion.
He's the hot commodity. Everybody wants him, right?
Well, he was in it for that UTEP job. He interviewed on Sunday. He didn't get it. He got second to Austin Peay's Scotty Walden. With his Texas connections and just the difference of that offense, I'd imagine he's a hot name that's thrown out there in a lot of those lists.
What do you make of Willie Fritz to Houston? Seems like a killer hire. I know Jeff Traylor was one you were hoping to keep at UTSA, but Willie Fritz won at Blinn. He won at Sam Houston State. He won big at Tulane. That guy can coach. Got great Texas ties, and he thinks he can build something special at U of H.
Yeah, Georgia Southern as well. He's won a conference championship at each of his stops as a coach. If he's able to do that again at Houston, he's pound for pound one of the best coaches we've seen in college football in a long time.
It's funny, I got the tip from how good of a coach he is from David Pierce, the Longhorn baseball coach. They were at Sam Houston together.
Yeah, Bearcats.
The Bearcats, and he said, hey, don't sleep on Willie Fritz. That guy can flat coach.
Yeah. And we talk about it a lot. Like, I really do think coaching changes are a lot like dating, where you're like 180 from your former partner. And like Dana Holgerson was the go out, have a good time on a Friday and Saturday night, and then you're really, really tired on Sunday and maybe like lose track of some of your obligations. Like Willie Fritz is going to stay home and watch a movie with you, and that's going to be something good for Houston
meat
to
and
kind
potatoes football, yeah.
Stabilize that program a little bit.
Well, it's all there if you can recruit and coach like he can. Did it at Tulane, and Tulane's a tough school. It's hard to get into academically. Yeah. You're recruiting against not just LSU, but the really big good schools in Louisiana and the South.
No real resources.
No, and he won a Cotton Bowl and has a team into the championship game again this year. Texas Tech will meet Cal in the Independence Bowl. That'll be December 16th. That's one of the first bowl games, only in 2 weeks for the Red Raiders, for Joey McGuire. That's going to be tough as they're trying to recruit and everything going on there. That's a tough game to get the 16th. SMU meets Boston College. Speaking of SMU, they got to go to Fenway Park to play Boston College in Boston. That seems like a bit of a raw deal.
This is another one I have a complaint about the College Football Committee. They used the whole, what is the best team to determine the fourth spot in the college football playoff. That's fine. But then they didn't when determining the G5 New Year's Six Bowl. Liberty got it because they were undefeated.
Yeah.
But Liberty stinks. Conference USA is not any good. They played nobody out of conference. SMU's only 2 losses are on the road to Oklahoma and on the road to TCU. They've beat everybody else. They beat Tulane with a backup quarterback. They're the best G5 football team, but Liberty got it because of their record. Florida State didn't. It's just that is what kills me when it comes to this stuff. If it was uniform, I could live with it. They just pick and choose, and it bothers me.
Yeah, when to apply it.
You're right.
Yeah, when it's going to be on ESPN.
Right.
It's probably they're all on ESPN.
It's like
all
baseball umpires. Just call it the same. If you're going to call it a little off the play, just keep calling it, and you're good.
Be consistent.
It's going back and forth.
It's well said. You feel bad for SMU. They got to go to Boston, where it could be freezing cold on December 28th to play Boston College. UTSA plays Marshall in the Frisco Bowl December 19th. One other note with coaching. How about Texas State? They named today Jake Spavital to be their new offensive coordinator, or Baylor, I should say. Yeah. Baylor. I meant, speaking of Texas State, their former coach, right. Jake Spavital. Now the Baylor offensive coordinator. Happy for Jake. I got to know Jake when he was here. He's a good guy. Did a real good job with the Cal offense. He knows offense, and Dave Aranda needs somebody that can know offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a total flip from Jeff Grimes.
They're going to total flip from Jeff Grimes. Not sure what they're going to do with the tight ends. Thank goodness for the transfer portal, because they can kind of hey, guys, you can stay. We're not kicking you out, but we don't use a tight end, so you can go ahead and mosey on down the road. I think they may use more tight ends just because of the roster that they're given. I don't know how they figure that out in one go, but it is absolutely going to be Dave Aranda doing the defensive thing, Jake Spavital doing the offensive thing, and that's why they wanted an OC with head coaching experience, so he doesn't have to micromanage them as much.
Any other news from the carousel? Is it spinning, or are we slowing down a little bit?
Slowing down a little bit. UTEP broke this morning at about 8 a.m. Scotty Walden from Austin Peay going out there to be their head coach. They won a couple conference championships. Offensive dude, young guy, I think he's 34 years old. Started at Sol Ross. And so the whole high school to college thing has picked up steam. I think the FCS and Division II up to FBS is also picking up steam as Lance Leipold and Chris Kleiman and Willie Fritz, as we just talked about, have success. Winners win. And I firmly believe that if you can win as a head football coach, then you can do that at pretty much any level.
Good stuff right there. Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine's Mike Craven. That's on the web at texasfootball.com. All right, Heisman Trophy finalists are out. Mike, who are we voting for? Michael Penix Jr., Jaden Daniels from LSU, Oregon signal caller Bo Nix, Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr. Your 4 finalists, one from each region essentially, which will divide the vote. My vote is going to the Longhorn opponent in the bowl, Michael Penix Jr., by a shade over LSU's Jaden Daniels. Who you got?
Yeah, mine's Jaden Daniels.
Okay.
I look at it at the most outstanding player and the guy that you can't tell the story of college football that season without. I mean, what Jaden Daniels has done has been incredible for a team that's not all that good.
I'm going to go with Penix just because of 11-2, 13-0. So 24-2 the last 2 years, huge wins, clutch performances, leads that team, wills that team at times, and I like Michael Penix, but I don't think he'll win. It's a West Coast thing that's probably going to go to Jaden Daniels out of the Deep South. I agree with you, but I would vote for Penix. And that's who the Longhorns will have to deal with in the National Championship semifinal coming up on January 1st. And that's going to wrap up our fourth quarter and our CFP edition of the Eyes on Texas multicast. Good stuff tonight. A lot of good stuff with Sark, Longhorns, Big 12 Championship. Appreciate all the good stuff with Quinn Ewers and Jalen Ford. Just outstanding. Our fourth quarter presented by my new pearly white smile, my restored teeth at 51 years old this week. Thanks to Dr. Greg Eckert and his team for helping to rebuild it. They had a plan. They helped me execute the plan. How do I turned out that going in to see Dr. Eckert is just my normal dentistry. I was a teeth grinder, so at night I would grind my teeth down. So over the course of 4 decades of my life, they were a lot smaller than they should have been. I just ground them down. And so it was hard for me to smile and show teeth. I had to smile really big. So we rebuilt it, and it's amazing what a confident smile can give you, whether it's restoration or a complete rebuild of the permanently secure dental implants. They can do both with Dr. Greg Eckert. Just go to their website or call them. Dr. Eckert is the best right here in Central Texas on Far West. Completely game-changing brain vault technology and the dentistry. Just the great, great people. Dr. Greg Eckert. That's Eckert with a U. Ueckert, Dr. Greg Eckert, talking about a restoration. You need one tooth, the entire mouth, a restoration, or permanently secure dental implants. Call him today. Guys, that's a wrap on another edition of the Eyes on Texas multicast, product of the Republic of Football on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Podcast Network. We're powered by Grande Equipment and our other founding partners. Thank you to our digital producer, Nolan Hogan, our executive producer, Griffin Hogan. Their incredible work again this week. Our founding partners, Carlos Carrion, the TexasMortgageGuy.com, Hayes City Store in Driftwood, and Taste on Main in downtown Buda. One Source Gas of Central Texas, Dr. Greg Eckert, my dentist, and his brain vault technology, the orthotic that is more than a mouthpiece. And, of course, our presenting partner powers us every week. Grande Equipment, locally owned, independent, but worldwide equipment company serving the heavy equipment needs of this area and the world since 2004. Online at grandeequipment.com. Mike, tell them one more time how to become a subscriber at Dave Campbell's, because high school football playoffs are down to the Final Four, semifinal round across the state. But all this coverage you can't get anywhere else. Yeah,
TexasFootball.com. We have, I want to say, almost half of the semifinals aired on TexanLive.com. So with a subscription, you'll be able to get that. You get the digital stuff. We have a recruiting magazine coming out this month. Micah Hudson's on the cover. We break down the top 100 players in the state and give out some super team stuff. And then every day, TexasFootball.com, coaching carousel, Texas high school football playoffs like you were talking about, and we'll have plenty of bowl coverage. I'll be at the Sugar Bowl from when Texas lands to kind of when they either win or lose. So it's going to be a fun month here.
I will be there too, and we will be bringing you coverage week by week here on the Eyes on Texas, the multicast that keeps you on top of all things Texas football and all things football in Texas. It's available to watch weekly on the Dave Campbell's and the Horn Austin YouTube channels, available for download on iTunes and Spotify. Tell a friend, please, and share it with people you know who love football, love Texas football, and love football in Texas. And you all can find it wherever you find your favorite podcast. Have a great week, everybody. Longhorns are in the CFP. They're Big 12 champions, and they'll play Washington on New Year's night. Hook 'em.